All right, welcome back to another episode. This week we are talking about the self-care activity Reiki, and I'm joined with Casey and Mitch. So let's just dive right into it. So, what is Reiki?
Good question. I don't really know a whole lot about Reiki, and so the way I understand it is it's working with energy, and it involves some light touch, and then kind of like also like hovering a little bit and like working with the energy. But that's all about my very mediocre understanding of Reiki. So.
I don't know a whole lot about it either. I've done it 2 times. Some intermediate level. No. And yeah, it's about energy movement. Sometimes you'll get some feedback about areas that seem maybe cloudy or blocked in some way. And usually at the beginning, they'll ask you to set an intent, and then at the end, they'll kind of tell you like, hey, this is kind of what I was feeling in the space, and then you kind of just have a conversation about like, oh yeah, I was feeling that way, or I was feeling this, and they're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense because of where I was sensing tension or whatever. So yeah, that's what I have experienced it as.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And so we were kind of thinking like that we might get the question why this activity. So one of the things we wanted to talk about today is why we chose Reiki. And I guess I could start. So I haven't done mine yet. Mine's today, but I know one of the reasons that I was interested in it is because it was so far outside of my comfort zone. I have never done any work with energy. I've never done anything even related to that. And so I wanted to try something a little new for me, and that's why I thought it would be interesting. But I'm curious why you all wanted to do it, and also why this activity for survivors.
I think for me, when I was thinking about doing it for this series, I think it's kind of an intermediate step for folks if you don't want a massage. Their intent is a little bit different, right? But for feeling nervous about being in a room mostly naked with a stranger, feeling weird about people touching your bare skin that you don't know, those types of things. Reiki happens in a very similar environment to massage, so it's usually a dimly lit, quiet room. I've had it on a massage table with blankets and stuff, but you're clothed, and the touch, if there's touch, they will usually ask you, is it okay if I touch you here? And it's really light, so I'm not worried about being in pain at all. And so that's one of the things I was thinking about for survivors, that this might be more accessible, depending on what their particular triggers might be, than a massage would be, and getting some of that same kind of benefit of having someone take care of them for a time.
That makes a lot of sense because I know that a lot of survivors have nervousness around both people touching them or about being in a room with someone that they don't know, right? And so that sounds like a great kind of introduction to getting either back into that or to that.
Yeah.
Right? What interested you about Reiki?
For me, it was, I've never tried it as well, so I was really interested in kind of expanding my horizons a little bit. And I tend to be a pretty spiritual person, so I kind of feel like there's some of that spirituality that's kind of involved in that. And so I wanted to explore that to see what might come up, or just to experience something totally new in that self-care genre. So I feel like also like for survivors it can be, like you were saying, Casey, I agree that it could be like a workup to a massage because it's so very light touch. And then like for example, for when I was there, the Reiki, are they called therapists, or I'm not sure what they're called? Practitioner would ask, consent before touching me in any place, and if this was okay or whatnot. So I felt like that was really respectful and helpful. and I can see how that can definitely flow into, working with survivors as well. Too, and survivors who might feel like me, like that spiritual piece of it, just like, wanting to see what that might bring up or come up, and like some of that energy healing and stuff like that too can be beneficial, I think.
So I'm hearing kind of two reasons that survivors may like to try it. One would be, I want to get into massage, but I don't know where to start. Or I want to get into Reiki and I'm a little nervous, so kind of getting into it that way. And I'm also hearing that it might be beneficial for survivors who do identify as spiritual, and they're looking for some kind of spiritual healing or that kind of reading. So kind of multiple reasons why a survivor might be interested in trying it.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard folks can experience it and have realizations about their life, so it brings some clarity into whatever. So like this last time I set an intent and to help with a transition that's happening in my life, and so the practitioner will practice with that intent and helping to create room for transition. And so it could be if you have a specific emotional thing that you're working through, that they can help provide some of that movement too.
Gotcha. Would they help you set an intent if that's something that someone's unfamiliar with?
They could.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it sounds like they really walk you through the whole process. That's cool.
That was my experience as well. And the practitioner also asked me like what my intent was, and like kind of guided me on what I wanted to maybe work on or focus on. And so that was really helpful. And then the feedback I got was pretty personal, and I was a little surprised because this is somebody that I've just met and they were telling me about what my energy interacting with theirs, what they took from that. And there were a few specific things that were I was really surprised about. So I don't know, it was really interesting, and it fit with what my intent was, and helping me focus and see things a little more clearly, like validating the path that I'm on and stuff. So I really appreciated that. So I enjoyed the experience.
Yeah. Sounds like you both got a lot out of it. Would you all mind, because I haven't done it, talking a little bit about how you felt maybe after you had a session?
Sure.
Both, I guess I'm thinking either short term, like how did it feel right after, but also if there were things that lingered with you.
For me, I would say, like kind of going back to when I was talking a little bit earlier, the things that lingered were the things that came up that were very specific to what I'm working on internally. And so that I'm still processing some of those things, just because I was so surprised that energy was picked up, or like it's amazing to me. So I'm still kind of digesting some of that, and it felt validating.
Yeah, and this was your first time meeting.
It was my very first time.
Yeah, that's wild that they can get such like a accurate read, right? Even after just meeting you one time.
Yes.
That kind of blows my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
I had two really pretty different experiences the two times I've done it. One, the first time I did it, I was able to kind of like calm down in the space, and there was a moment in the room where I like my arm twitched, and then after she was able to be like, hey, I really felt this like shift in energy, kind of like a triangle through your body, and talk me through like what that meant, and so we were able to kind of figure out where I might be holding tension or trauma or like some of those types of things, which was really good. But the second time I came out and I felt really confused. And she was like, how are you feeling? And I'm like, chaotic. And she was like, okay, good. I couldn't figure out if it was you or me, but someone was bringing chaos to the room. But it was helpful because even though like I wasn't really able to like come into my body and relax into this session, I still felt more relaxed than when I went into it.
Okay.
The second time I did it in the middle of a work day, so I was like transitioning from like being at the office and then getting there on time and then knowing that I had to go back to the office. And so I think when I do this in the future, I'll be more intentional about how it's going to fit into the flow of my day, because the first time was at the end of the day, so I knew I could just go home and or sit in my car for a while if I needed to. So the experience was pretty different the two times, but I hope that folks watching are going to listen and hear that doesn't mean it was a failure, right? That like I didn't get anything out of it just because I wasn't able to be fully present. Like I kept coming back in my head while all this stuff is happening in the room, coming back to, okay, just let that thought go and come back into the space. And it happened throughout the whole time, right? And that doesn't mean that I didn't do it right or anything right? Like that just meant that's where I was at in that particular day.
That totally makes sense, right? And like having to, and that it's not a bad thing. Like you can get Reiki even if you're not feeling fully present in yourself or your body. It doesn't mean, as you said, like that you did something wrong or that it's not a good time. It just means the readings might be a little bit different. And probably still tell you something about your energy or about your body that, hopefully is helpful.
Yeah. No, it wasn't a surprise that was the energy that was happening, right? Not a surprise. Yeah.
And I'm also, what's interesting is I'm also hearing that it might be good for folks who are interested in trying this activity to have a plan for what am I going to do afterwards, right? Kind of a self-care plan. What if I get, what if the person tells me something that I wasn't expecting to hear, and how am I going to, process that, right? Do I need to spend some alone time? Do I need to go be with a support system? So making a plan, it sounds like, might be beneficial for folks, even if it's not their first time experiencing that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I actually felt very relaxed and almost fell asleep a couple times. And I was a little nervous about that because I wasn't sure, like, if that's a good client, being a good client or whatever, So I checked in about that, and apparently it's pretty normal. So
Okay, that's good to know because I'm worried about that myself. So
I definitely think I snored maybe once or twice.
So if you fall asleep, no biggie.
No biggie.
Cool. Good to know.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say is that you can come into it however you want. So like most of the time it's fully clothed, but because I knew, so the person who did my practice I have a long-standing relationship with, and I wore jeans that day, and I knew that if I was going to lay on the table, I wouldn't like feel very comfortable in my like kind of constrictive clothes. And so she stepped out of the room. I was able to take my jeans off. I left everything else on, and then just put a blanket over me, and it was fine. It was better for me than to have been uncomfortable,
Right?
And stay and tried to just manage it, right? So it was cool in getting to speak up and like name a need and have it so readily accepted was awesome.
And that seems like it's kind of been your experience throughout the whole thing, right? Like if you can say, I don't want to be touched here, I'm not comfortable with touch at all, right? Or kind of any of the things that you are closed, not closed, whatever you're comfortable with, and they'll work with you. And I think that's, we've talked about it in other sessions too, right? But I think that's something that I also need to work on is like, this is a service that I'm getting, like it should be the best for me in this moment, right? And that looks different on different days, and it looks different depending on who you are, right? So, and I'm kind of thinking like maybe even like, it seems like something that maybe for some folks is less frequent than something like massage or something like acupuncture where you have more of a schedule. Would you say that Reiki is something that you have a little bit more flexibility with how frequently they recommend, or?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know how often people would recommend it.
I don't either.
We should ask.
We should ask that.
Yeah.
Hey, when you go for it later, ask.
I will ask.
Yeah.
TBD. All right. So, final thoughts. Would you all recommend this activity? Would you recommend Reiki to survivors? Thumbs up if you would. Middle if you don't know. Thumbs down if you wouldn't. Nice.
2 thumbs up. Try it. See if you like it.
Thanks for listening in on this Self-Care Summer Dialogue. You can follow along on Instagram and YouTube, and you can sign up to participate in some of our hosted events through our website at www.wgac.colostate.edu. That's www.wgac.colostate.edu. And as always, we're here to support you 24/7, 365 through the Victim Assistance Team at 970-492-4242.